Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of True Believers here on the Fandom Podcast Network. True Believers is the show that covers everything that's happening in Marvel and in the MCU. And right now, of course, what everybody is talking about is Daredevil Born Again. And we are very excited. We're going to be covering episode 3 here tonight on this very fun podcast. But you know what? I can't do my attorneying alone. I need a full complement of law firm and high-powered attorneys with me, and maybe a guy who's a little sneaky and knows how to get a witness from one place to the other. And I know just the man for that. He is the co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, and he's been known to get a few people through some international things. That is the one and only Mr. Kevin Reitzel.
What's going on, man? Good to be back. Talking some Daredevil Born Again, man. This show's good. I enjoyed talking about the episode.
You know, I'm going to start calling you Cherry, because I know you're handling some international affairs, bringing some people into the States very soon. So we're excited for you for that too.
You're going to call me what?
Cherry. Cherry was the one who was supposedly transporting the witness. You're an expert.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But I need my guy who I can trust on the witness stand. He's not going to crack under the pressure of half the New York Police Department looking at him. And I know just the guy for that. He is also known as Catpool. He is the only one and only Static Cat, Mr. Cat Cedar.
What's going on, guys? Can't wait to talk about number 3. Ooh, good stuff.
That is what we are here to do. Again, this is True Believers on the Fandom Podcast Network, and we're here to talk everything MCU and Daredevil Born Again. This is going to be a spoiler reaction show. So, guys, I am forewarning you now. That's right. We are going full spoiler into episode 3 of Daredevil Born Again, and we're going to get right into it here. So, again, Cap and Tony giving you the spoiler alerts, but let's get into things, which means getting into our phases, which means going into phase 1. And just a reminder as we kick off this phase, please check out everything that's happening on the Fandom Podcast Network. And hey, we have a new QR code up there. Give that a scan. It'll take you to our podcasting homepage where you can find all the great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. And let's get into it with Daredevil Born Again. Guys, we kicked off things with episode 3. We had the first 2 episodes right out of the gate, and it just blew us away. And I'm so excited to have episode 3 here as we continue to talk Daredevil Born Again. And with that, Kevin, we're going to talk about the episode The Hollow of His Hand. Would you be so kind to step up and give us the attorney's version of the plot synopsis?
All right, you got it. Episode 3, The Hollow of His Hand. Fisk's old business associates take advantage of his absence to begin a gang war over his territories. Vanessa sends Buck Cashman to ease tension between the gangs, while Fisk believes they should just let them kill each other. Although Cherry is successfully able to bring Torres to Hector's trial, Torres is intimidated by the police and commits perjury by testifying that he was never assaulted. With no other option, Murder reveals Hector's identity as White Tiger in open court, despite initially pushing against it. With new witness accounts, the police records detailing Hector's heroic deeds, Murdock and McDuffie successfully convinced the jury to declare Hector not guilty on all charges. Fisk denounces the result of the trial and vows to uphold his stance on anti-vigilantism. While on patrol as White Tiger, Hector is murdered by a man wearing Frank Castle's emblem.
What an episode, guys. Not heavy on the action, but courtroom action galore. This felt like an episode of Law, a really good episode of Law and Order. So I want to get everybody's reactions to this episode. Kevin, I want to start with you. What would you think of the 3rd episode of Daredevil Born Again?
Really enjoyed it. For an episode that wasn't action-packed, it actually held up really well, because one of the things that I find appealing, of course, not knowing about the Daredevil comic very well at all, I like the fact that we get to see Matt Murdock doing his lawyering stuff, and he's having his friends help him too, whether it's Cherry or his co-counsel, whatever it is, trying to help Hector here and trying to, get the angle of what's happening, especially with that witness, hostile witness or whatever that it was, a perjury witness that wouldn't do that. So he took some chances during this trial by exposing Hector as the White Tiger vigilante. And I have something I want to ask about that later on because I found it fascinating. Yeah, and then it kind of takes a turn at the end. But I like seeing Matt do lawyer stuff. I like a good courtroom scene with drama, and I'm glad that they aren't, pushing that under the rug for this series. I don't know how much that they spent on time in the comics with him doing lawyer stuff and big trials and stuff like that. Feel free to enlighten me on that, but I like that. I liked seeing that here, and then also too, just laying the world around Fisk and let it kind of percolate a little bit, because there's like a power structure now, because now he's supposed to be the respectable, mayor, but people are fighting over his territories and things are getting violent.
Kat, before we get into your reactions, why don't you catch Kevin up on how much lawyering Daredevil actually Matt Murdock does in the comics? Because it's actually quite a bit.
I would say if you go back to the earlier issues, way back in the beginning, like the 100s and 200s, I would say pretty much every issue had him doing something lawyer based, whether it was in the actual law room, talking to a judge, talking to a counsel, talking to the person who was defending. Quite a bit.
That's good to hear. Cool. So they're staying true to the comic with that. I like that.
Very much.
Now, Kat, what about your reactions to this episode?
I had the exact same reaction you did when you said the Law and Order, except I said Law and Order Hell's Kitchen. It was the Hell's Kitchen. I liked it quite a bit. It was a very good episode. Again, not very action-packed like Kevin said, which I personally am a big fan of action-packed because it's Daredevil and he's action-packed. But this was a great, let me show you the other side of me and what I can do, and how he was using his hearing and his abilities in the courtroom, listening to the people, the bad cops talking. He's like, oh, what do you say? Oh, okay, so we can't use that now because they know this, and if they do that, they'll do this. So it was really good for what it was. A good episode. And again, that ending was just left field.
Yeah, the ending was definitely shocking. I really enjoyed this episode because of the legal play that they had going on, but I also really enjoyed it because of what they were doing with the Kingpin and Vanessa in this episode. Seeing there's still a push and pull there about the power struggle between them, and that when they have that conversation, when the counselor steps out of the room and she talks about what she did with trying to make peace, and you can tell that the Kingpin is like, no, I want chaos because I want to be able to clean. I think his master plan is to clean up that chaos and make himself look better as the mayor, and maybe in a way sacrifice Vanessa in the process, even though he doesn't necessarily mean to. But he's playing a much longer game here than anybody else is at the moment, and I thought that was so intriguing. And this is what makes Daredevil so good, even in the comics. Yes, you have a lot of action, but the great thing about Daredevil is the writing and the depth of the stories they have written for Daredevil, and they're doing it here much like they did when it was on Netflix. They're doing it here, really building the world and building the story, which I think is going to lead to a massive payoff in episodes very, very shortly.
Yeah, especially when they did the Frank Miller stuff.
Yeah,
I want to give credit too to Kamar De La Reyes, rest in peace, by the way, of his portrayal as Hector in this episode too. You really got to show some emotion. You really, especially during his testimony, and it was a very tense scene when we were waiting to hear what the verdict was going to be on the counts that he was charged on, and he was really good at it.
Well, and that's a good transition, Kevin. Let's talk about the cast in this episode. You talked about who stood out for you. Kat, who stood out for you in this episode?
Well, without talking about the two obvious people, Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, Hector Ayala, he was great. Even oh my God, what was his name? Yeah, the bad guy, what the hell do they call him? The defendant that was supposed to say something and didn't, and lied
Torres.
on court. Yeah,
Nicky Torres.
Yeah, even his portrayal of being like, yes, I'll do it, and then turning a complete sleazeball, and being that asshat, pardon my French, on the court and lying, which is a huge thing. His portrayal of that character, just keeping him that like sleazy person, I thought was pretty spot on as well.
Clark Johnson is Cherry too, by the way. I'm really liking this guy. He's based on a real character, right?
Yes. I don't think he had quite as big of a role in the comics, but they've expanded it for the show.
Yeah, he's like the inspector guy, and does the private detective that finds stuff out for Matt. Which you need one of those guys, to kind of go behind the scenes, get your hands dirty a little bit, and I like that.
That guy before was Ben Urich. That was his guy before Cherry.
I do want to say too, the moment when the one officer, the dirty officer, is on the stand and he's just lying through his teeth. What a great performance, because you were just so angry because he's lying through his teeth. Yeah. And I guess for me, because of some personal things too, when you see that, especially from somebody who's supposed to be upholding the law and stuff, it just makes you angry. And he played that sleazy aspect of it so well. And so I want to give him some props as well. I mean, again, everything on this cast is phenomenal. It's just they've nailed it, and even with the changes in the cast, they've still got it. But guys, we're going to shift into phase 2 because we've got a little trivia for Daredevil Born Again episode 3. Now, Kevin, can you help me out here, because you found this piece of trivia about one of your favorite soft drinks?
The fictional Brazilian soft drink, Pingo Doce, appears on a bus stop advertisement Bruce Banner worked at Pingo Doce bottling plant in The Incredible Hulk in 2008. That was the Incredible Hulk where he's down in South America, I think it is.
Yeah.
And he accidentally bleeds into one of the bottles, and then we get a Stan Lee cameo of him drinking it. And that's how they track Bruce Banner down there to the bottling plant. And there's a big fight down there. So, yeah, Pingo Dolce. Yes. It says refreshing lemon lime with a vanilla kick. It radiates delicious flavor to smash your thirst.
It smashed Stan Lee's thirst in Incredible Hulk. That is for sure.
And by the way, it's exclusively at Pim Test Kitchen on Coca-Cola Freestyle.
Well, my question is do they actually shrink it when they ship it and then re-enlarge it when they get it in the stores?
I don't know, but I want to try this.
Actually a real drink?
I don't know.
That'd be funny if it was.
Yeah. Next up, we're talking about pulling right from the comics, and I think this is a very important piece of trivia, and we'll get into it. Tragically, White Tiger is shot and killed the night he's released at the end of Daredevil Born Again, episode 3. This actually mirrors the comics when Hector was found guilty during his trial on the page. Attempting to escape custody, Hector was similarly shot right as evidence proving his innocence was discovered. In the aftermath, his amulet goes to his niece Angela and later on to his sister Ava. So it will be interesting to see how they play this out in the MCU as well. So a lot of people have been talking about this. He was killed shortly after the trial in the comics. So a little bit of differences, but pretty much staying true to what they did in the comics, Kat.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just surprised that they did it in this episode. I thought this would have been something that would have started the next episode to bring up the Punisher and have him in the same episode. But the way they did it, I mean, wow, that was all I could say, because they nailed it, and then they sort of ended it right there. Like, what? This isn't a two-parter? Damn it!
Well, guys, that was a little bit of trivia, but we're not done with phase 2, because not only do we have trivia in phase 2, we have some Easter eggs, and there was a few in this episode of Daredevil. And I'm actually going to kick off with one that's kind of fun, because it could be something, it could be not, but I think it's worth mentioning. Miles Morales shout out, possibly. One of the officers reports in favor of White Tiger comes from one Officer Morales. Despite being a common last name, it's worth noting that Miles Morales' father is a cop in his alternate universe, and there is a version of Aaron Davis and Miles Morales in the MCU, as confirmed by 2017 Spider-Man Homecoming. Likewise, Jefferson legally changed his name to Morales in the comics recently. So maybe a little drop out of hints, but wouldn't be the first time we've had a Spider-Man mentioned in this show, Kevin.
I didn't catch that reference at all, so that's cool. I like it when they have this connective tissue between the TV series and the movies, especially a Spider-Man movie.
Did you happen to catch that, Kat?
I caught the Morales name, but that's all I caught.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how it plays out. They like to have a little fun over there. But our next Easter egg is you saw a lot of the Punisher symbol in this episode. When Cherry comes to take Nikki Torres to court to serve as Matt Murdock and Kristen Starr witness in the Ayala trial, graffiti of the Punisher logo can be seen on a nearby wall with the word "triggered." Well, supposedly now that they're hinting that this was done by the supervillain artist known as Muse, who in the comics started creating art inspired by vigilantes such as Punisher, Daredevil, and more. Muse's signature can be seen below the work of art, and the red around the skull is quite concerning, considering Muse is known to use the victim's blood in his work. And I know Muse is going to be a part of this series later on. They've already had said that. This show is going to get dark real quick, Kevin.
So I noticed we've been seeing this Punisher skull tattoo on several guys that are of bad intent. I noticed one guy in the courtroom. I think he had one on his neck as like a neck tattoo. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of seeing this go around here. Can you just give me a quick lowdown on who the Muse was in the comics?
In the comics, he was a serial killer who was obsessed with vigilante heroes. Okay, but he was also he would do these graffitis, but he would do them incorporated with blood from his victims, and he really messed around with Daredevil. And it was those were some dark issues, Kat.
Yeah. He's a psychopath that loves his art. Yeah. Literally.
Yeah. And this is going to, like I said, this show could get dark real quick once they get into the Muse part.
Oh, yeah.
But we also had a wonderful tradition brought up, too. A bottle of O'Melveny, a Nelson and Murdock tradition. Following the court victory, Matt shares a bottle of O'Melveny's with Heather, a tradition he once had with Foggy whenever they'd win a case. I just like that they had that little moment, recognizing Foggy, recognizing their tradition, and that is still important to Matt.
Even in the comics, that was important. They had that same thing in the comics, too.
Yes, they did. And finally, our last Easter egg is actually the Kingpin, and with his quote, "Juries get it wrong, I should know." This comment comes from Fisk as he speaks to his own legal troubles and criminal history, suggesting that he was able to avoid prolonged jail time via appeals in the aftermath of Daredevil Season 3 when he was defeated by Matt Murdock. It's also been theorized that Fisk took advantage of the chaos created by the blip to secure his freedom. And that, guys, would make a lot of sense. Fisk is the kind of guy who would take advantage of that situation and use it to get himself out of trouble. So,
absolutely.
I think that was a nice little moment there, and really reflecting on more on the Kingpin, which they do so well, even if he doesn't have a ton of screen time in the episode. And he didn't really have a lot in this episode, but a lot of key moments with that. But guys, that does wrap up our trivia and Easter eggs. So it's time to hit the little Tesseract power and shift into phase 3. It's looking a little dull, Kevin. What have you been doing with that thing?
I think I need to shine it up.
That's what she said.
Don't let Thanos know what you've been doing. That's all I'm saying. He texts me on occasion. It's a little scary. But guys, it is time for phase 3. We're going to dive into some of our key plot points for this episode and get a little bit more in-depth on things. And obviously the big thing in this episode was White Tiger. Why is he important in Daredevil Born Again? He also was the first Marvel Latino superhero in mainstream comics. Hector Ayala debuted in 1975 after the success of Black Panther, written by Bill Mantulo and drawn by legendary comic artist George Perez. Ayala, known as the White Tiger, was a Puerto Rican college student living in New York. He appeared in Master of Kung Fu comics with Shang-Chi. He appeared in Heroes for Hire. You saw him a lot with Iron Fist. This was a character who also kind of had a renaissance thanks to the storyline they did in Daredevil with Hector Ayala and going on trial. And of course, his character being killed, but the legacy of White Tiger has continued in the MCU with 2 female versions of the character, including one that for a short time was a member of the Avengers. But this is a very important story as far as tying in things with Daredevil, and it's a great story for this Born Again because it's helping Matt see some different perspective on Vigilante, considering everything he has been through. Kevin, how important do you feel as an outsider? Really, this is your introduction to White Tiger. Do you feel that this character is an important part of this series?
Yeah, and it sounds like he's had an important stand in the comics. But it's kind of sad that we get him killed off in the third episode. I would have liked to have seen him cook a little bit. And I was listening to some of the podcasts. I felt that this series has done him dirty. They didn't give him enough time to kind of do stuff. And I know maybe this will make a much stronger impact on the bigger storyline that we're going to have. That we're going to speculate on in a little bit. But I love the actor that played him, and I would have liked to have seen him last a little bit longer. I mean, it's been dark already. We got Foggy killed in the first episode, and we get this guy killed in the third episode. It's a bloody trail.
Yeah, it has been. Kat, what about you? I mean, you are obviously probably like me a little bit more familiar with White Tiger in the comics. He's been a character that's always had a look people have really liked. He's been in and out of comics. He was really popular in the 70s and early 80s when Marvel was doing a lot of stuff with Master of Kung Fu and things like that. Faded away and then brought back to prominence with the trial that they did in Daredevil.
Yeah, when he first came out, I liked him when I first read his comic that he was in with his first appearance, and I was talking to a friend of mine about the necklace moving instead of going to his sister and then his niece. Instead of going to the martial artists like Shang-Chi, but his group of people that he used to train with. What? What's
the significance with the necklace? Is it powerful?
That's how he gets his powers. He gets his enhanced
What powers
strength.
Does he have? I didn't see any of it in the show.
Enhanced strength, enhanced durability, increased speed, enhanced senses. Not quite like Wolverine, but enhanced senses.
Okay.
And
I kind of feel in. Sorry to interrupt, Kat, but I kind of feel in the TV series it was just a ceremonial thing. Like
I think that's all they made. It was ceremonial, but in the comics it does all that, and also there's slight regenerative properties depending on which decade you're looking at. What they're doing with it. They did break it up into 3 pieces at one time too, so. That could also change the powers when they come back. But other than that, yeah, I think they could have had him on for one more episode just to showcase his skills and what he could do. I mean, they did it a little bit in the when he was on the platform when he killed, quote unquote, accidentally killed the cop. What he didn't do.
If if the comic had regenerative details, he sure could have used that in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You take it off, and though, it goes away.
I do think that they're actually going to play up maybe down the road a little bit some of the mystical powers of the amulet, because in the comics, the amulet comes from Kung Lu, which is, of course, where Iron Fist comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very important, especially if they do eventually bring back the Iron Fist character, because I think they could do a storyline involving this amulet. And its amulet, while it made him a hero, there was a side effect to it. Enhancement and everything it gave him was like a drug, and you become addicted to it. And that's why in the comics for a while, they broke it up into 3 pieces because it had a less adverse effect on the users when it was broken up into pieces. One person having it, it was going to take them down a little bit of a dark path. And that's what happened to Hector somewhat in the comics because of the influence of the amulet. So I'm hoping they play up a little bit more on that going forward, because I think it would be some interesting storylines that they could do even in another series, whether they bring Iron Fist back or something else. I think it would be very interesting to see, but I think bringing in this storyline for the White Tiger was the right call. I think it is very important to what's happening with Matt Murdock. I think it's going to set up some interesting things. Because one of the things I loved at the end of the episode too was you see Matt sitting there and he's holding the horn from his costume and he's just kind of rubbing it, and you can tell he's really starting to get into that point of doubt about his decisions and the desire to maybe return to as Daredevil. So how they will play this out will be very interesting. But there was something very big that happened at the end of this episode with the death of White Tiger. And it involved this guy, supposedly, the Punisher. At first glance, the question is, did the Punisher actually kill Hector Ayala, or was White Tiger's murderer a crooked cop? Surely he had to be. But at first glance, it might seem like the Punisher killed Hector Ayala. The final shot of the episode shows the killer walking towards the camera with the familiar Punisher skull logo painted on a vest. However, there's simply no rational reason Frank would target White Tiger. This, along with the cop's tattoo, means Daredevil Born Again adapts the troubling history of the police adopting the Punisher logo, which we will talk about in a little bit. These cops worship Frank Castle because he kills with impunity, and while they are bound by the law. So, for me, I think it's very obvious that it wasn't Frank Castle who killed White Tiger. However, I do think that maybe it was somebody that the Kingpin hired to set up to frame the Punisher, because Kingpin definitely has beef with the Punisher, even in the MCU, and I think that's what it could lead to. I think most people are thinking that along those lines, or at least saying it definitely wasn't the Punisher. But Kevin, you mentioned earlier you saw the cops with the kind of changed a little bit Punisher tattoos, kind of reflecting that they're all part of the same group. What did you think of this when this happened? What were your initial reactions?
Well, I knew it wasn't Frank, obviously. Frank wouldn't do that, and I know that's the next topic. But what I'm trying to figure out here is with the theories that is brought up here, that there's these cops that worship Frank because he kills with impunity, and maybe they've started their own cult of Frank, so to speak.
The cult of Frank.
Yeah, I mean, I'm into use so many words, but I think too that with the Dirty Cops, how entrenched is Wilson Fisk in with the Dirty Cops? Because he had to, the cop that he had, the chief of police or whatever, that he had to kind of basically blackmail to stay in, he seems like he's a good cop that doesn't want anything to do with Wilson Fisk. But Wilson obviously blackmailed him, with threat of his family. So these other cops that have the little tattoos and stuff like that, leaving their, and then there's that picture that you guys showcased earlier that might be the Muse. So is it the Muse running this group, hired by Fisk, or are they running independently? I kind of get the feeling Fisk has something to do with it, because when Hector is acquitted, basically, that's not Fisk was not happy at all. And then it goes into the next scene of, White Tiger going out on patrol and then getting shot in the head with someone who has the Punisher logo. And the Punisher usually works alone, as far as I know. And I think that anyone that is dirty and does something like that would be a target of the real Punisher, the real Frank. And so obviously Frank's either being set up, or there's this group of thugs with either cops or former cops doing their own vigilante behind the scenes, and then either worshiping Frank or trying to set him up.
Kat, what about you? I mean, this was a shocking ending, obviously for a lot of reasons, but I think everybody sees it. This is a red herring as far as the Punisher goes.
Oh, absolutely. This is a dirty cop. I don't know necessarily if the Kingpin had anything to do with it. He may have. He does have a lot of influence in the police. So he may have said, hey, Ayala got off, get rid of him. But they did it in the style of the Punisher, because of that Punisher, the people who love the Punisher. What do we call it? The something of Frank? What do we call it?
Cult of Frank.
Cult of Frank, yes, the Cult of Frank. One of the cops, dirty cops, is the one who did it, obviously. To kill him, because Frank Castle, from everything I've read about him when he first debuted and up to now, he doesn't kill people in masks just because they're wearing a mask, or else he would have killed Daredevil a long time ago. He is out for vengeance because of the criminals that killed his family. We've seen it all in the movies. That's who he kills: crime lords, crime bosses, syndicates.
Stuff that Wilson Fisk is not a fan of happening. So yeah,
exactly. And so for him to kill White Tiger is so far left field that it went over the fence and the ball's lost in the swamp somewhere. Not going to happen. It's a corrupt cop posing as Castle to have Castle come back out because they love Castle and they want him to kill people. That this is going to infuriate him. He's going to find out who did it, and then we're going to get dark. And as for your question about the other guy, he uses a knife. He's not a gun shooter. He's a stabby.
Muse.
The Muse. He's a stabby kind of guy.
Well, guys, this topic leads into our actual third topic here on Phase 3 of True Believers. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the Punisher, because the MCU's Frank Castle would not kill somebody like White Tiger. But however, Daredevil Born Again might be tackling a troubling trend with the Punisher and the police in real life. Beyond his revenge, Frank Castle became the Punisher to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Whatever he's been up to since his series ended, it's safe to assume that Frank is selective about his targets to ensure, as he told Daredevil when they first met, the people I kill need killing. One reason bad cops in the real world embrace the Punisher logo is because the comic version is less discriminate. If the police misunderstand who the Punisher is in Daredevil Born Again, it will make that story all the more resonant. As a veteran, Frank Castle understands duty, service, and the power of restraint. In fact, his trouble began when he realized his unit was being used to kill innocent people. The cops who have perverted his symbol and his mission will likely be met with the same retribution. To Frank, they are nothing but outbreakers without honor. If a witness or even Matt Murdock believes he killed Hector, Frank will have a clear reason to act. He will do what he does best, render punishment on the thugs and murderers no one else is willing to stop. Now, guys, this brings up a point of, over the last several years, the Punisher logo has been incorporated into a lot of things. Gangs. Heck, Donald Trump had a hat with his toupee on it with the Punisher over the Punisher skull.
Military servicemen have used it. Yeah.
There's also been the police started a thin blue line, which is kind of representative of the fallen police. But there have been some that have taken it, and I've seen a flag that has that thin blue line, but it incorporates the Punisher symbol, and it's became a pretty well-known problem, and a lot of people were getting concerned about it. In fact, Marvel got very concerned about it to the point where a couple of years ago, they took the classic Punisher logo, which is a great and iconic logo, without question. But they did this. In the comics, they actually killed Frank Castle, and he was brought back by the Hand and brought back to be the leader of the Hand. And because of the mystical side of the Hand and what was going on, they changed the Punisher symbol to what you see if you're watching on YouTube, the image that is not marked out. And that has been the Punisher symbol now for the last few years. This has not gone over real well with diehard Punisher fans and comic book fans.
That is a horrible design.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because it ties in with a demon the Hand worshipped, and
the big horns coming up. Oh my god, yeah, that is not good.
Like I said, if you get rid of those big horns coming up, it would be an okay symbol. I think.
No. It'd
be better than what it looks like. Those horns are terrible.
It feels like that design was, ordered from Wish. I mean, it was bad.
Ordered from Wish.
But
yeah,
yeah.
Kat doesn't get the reference to Wish.com. How it's like really bad stuff that you order from them. So,
yeah. But I do want to get your guys' thoughts on this, because do you feel that Born Again is pulling from this real life thing that has been happening and incorporating in there to maybe put in a message in it? Kevin, you already talked about how your knowledge.
What kind of message are you getting at? I mean, what do you mean?
What the Punisher symbol means and what it's turned into for a lot of people, both good and bad. And I think that's something they're going to be playing up through the rest, for at least for this, as however long this particular story arc goes on. But you mentioned the military's used it and things like that, so I'm curious to your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know outside of the military being used, like the famous sniper Luttrell. I know he used it, and so I've seen it military aspect. People use it and garner it, but I haven't seen it really used outside of it. I haven't seen the any controversy about it. I'm not familiar with it, and I was not familiar with that new logo until you just showed me now. Thank God. But to me, that's not the Punisher logo. I have 4 Punisher films. I think it's 4 that say otherwise. That's not the Punisher logo, and it's I guess in the comics, they killed Frank. As soon as you kill Frank, I'm out. It's the same reason why I'm not a fan of this Ronin Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series, where all 3 turtles die and there's only one left. You got to have the brothers. Frank dies, I'm not going to see a resurrected one with a weird logo with horns. I'm not cool with it.
Cap, what about you? Are you familiar with the how people have kind of incorporated the Punisher symbol, especially over the last several years?
I've seen it on different things. I've seen different people, garments, hats on their trucks. The Punisher logo is so famous for what it is. Being the skull and changing it to what that is. No, that's. I mean, sure, they understand they killed Frank. They brought him back. Mystic, understandable, but don't change the symbol to that.
It looks like some alien race logo, from another planet. That's what it looks like.
I thought it was a Raider fan logo.
Oh, dude, don't even go there. That's horrible.
I love you, brother.
God.
Well, guys,
I'm not a fan of it. I don't like it. I think they should just retcon that, let him go back to his old logo, and people like that logo. People want to use it on their stuff because they appreciate the idea of what maybe the Punisher does or in the comics, or just likes the character so much that they want to have the logo. I mean, some people like, Deadpool and want to have the logo on him. I don't know why. I can't explain anything.
Well, guys, that's going to wrap up Phase 3. So let's transition into Phase 4. Give our final thoughts and maybe predictions of what might lie ahead for Daredevil Born Again. Okay, guys, we have been talking about Daredevil Born Again, and it's always fun. And this series is just so intriguing and so just pulls you in. And this episode, even with, like we talked about earlier, even without a lot of action in it, it pulls you in. It makes you think. You get so pulled in by the dialogue and the world that they've built here. And it's been so good. I want to get your final thoughts and maybe some predictions of what we might see over the next couple episodes, as we have now a little bit more layout of what is happening in Daredevil Born Again, and maybe too if there was anything that we might have missed in our discussion. Kat, I want to start with you.
I'm thinking the next episode is going to be more, like we said, going down the darker path. Punisher's going to come back. He's going to have some probably beef with Daredevil like he does in the past. Find out what happened. Then realize it wasn't Daredevil. It was the Kingpin, or maybe even Vanessa. And then just go from there. I see the Muse sort of watching this from afar like he does, and then goes, ooh, the Punisher's back. Let's start killing some people and making pictures of the Skull logo or Daredevil logo and see what happens. But I see a few more of those. I don't really see a lot more law scenes, except maybe for if they actually do try to bring the Kingpin in for something, or Vanessa in for something, or the Muse for something. We could see some more law scenes. I'd love to see them bring back Bullseye. That would be nice, since he was in the first episode.
Yeah, I feel like he knows he's getting out. That's why I was wondering. So, yeah.
You mean the character getting out? The actor?
Yeah, he's in jail, but he didn't seem too worried to go to jail. I think he's
because he'll be freed. Yeah. He'll be let go.
Yeah.
He has enough corrupt cops and enough money to go, let me out. And okay, we'll let you out because we know you can kill us with a toothpick. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. A little more dark, like you said, Kyle. Maybe a little bit more at the end, like the last episode or two, maybe some law stuff. But I think it's going to just go dark and just continue dark for the next few episodes.
Kevin, what about you? Any final thoughts on this episode and any predictions?
Yeah, so it's going to be dark the whole series. Let's just go ahead and say that. So the question is what type of evidence is going to be found of who killed Hector? That's the big question, because that's going to have ramifications. Is there going to be any evidence that, hey, yeah, the Punisher killed this guy? Are they going to leave evidence for that? We don't know. So I guess we're going to find out, because if you want to flush the Punisher out of hiding, you start killing people in his name, he's going to come out. And also, you're going to become a target of his too. So if Matt's going to believe anything of any evidence that has something to do with the Punisher, I think Matt's smart enough to know that White Tiger would not be a target for Castle at all, because he was one of him. He was a vigilante like him. So he's going to assume that there's corruption. And you have to be blind to not see everyone's freaking tattoos and neck tattoos and he's seen it already before. There's something funny. See how I said you have to be blind? See how I said that?
Mm-hmm.
Did you get that?
Yeah, I mean, I see what you did there.
Hey, you guys got to react to that.
We got your joke. We got
Come
your joke.
on. Give me something here.
We're not wearing glasses.
Anyway, so I feel like he's gonna look past this thing, and he's gonna see, they're trying to either bring out, kill one vigilante to flush another one out. So
I think all good points. One of the things I didn't mention that I'm actually very curious about too is at the end of the episode when the Kingpin talks to his aide and says, "Get your friend BB back." He's about to use her and work in ways that I don't think she's seen coming, and I think her story could get very interesting as well.
Yeah.
As far as Matt and the Punisher goes, I think the next episode is really going to be Matt getting back into Daredevil, even though he might not don the suit right away. I think it's going to be leading into that. As far as the Punisher goes, first of all, I'm just going to say it. We're about the end of March, 2 episodes of Daredevil drop. That's my prediction of that's when John Barenthal's Punisher is going to show up in this series. Isn't that?
I think he's going to show up sooner than that. He has to show up sooner than that.
You might see him at the end of next week's episode. But what I will say this: when Frank Castle shows up in Daredevil Born Again, the body count of this series is going to skyrocket. the shit will hit the proverbial fan. And Kevin, you talked about Matt being blind. You have to be blind. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
No, make your point, because I got 2 things I want to mention.
I also think, however, Matt is skeptical enough of Frank Castle that Frank Castle could have gone over the edge and gone too far, that he can maybe believe, could it have been Castle? Could Castle have really gone over the edge? And that has been something that's happened in the comics where people think he's gone over the edge. And Frank is fine letting people believe that. That's the part of the problem. But I think that could be something where they're heading to lead to that Daredevil Frank confrontation, which of course then they'll sort through. But yeah, when Frank Castle shows up, this shows what body count is going to quadruple easily.
We should keep tabs on that. How many people die?
So there's 2 things I want to bring up. First thing is, I noticed that they're doing this. We haven't really brought it up, and I haven't seen anyone really talk about it. And I'm wondering what kind of effect it's going to have on throughout the series. Is we're getting these man or woman on the streets talking to press and giving their thoughts of what's happening around the city. I know that kind of lets us know as normal people of how they're reacting to what's happening, but I find that interesting, and I'm wondering if that's going to tie into something larger later on, because they're talking to all kinds of different people around the city, and that's what I'm curious about. The other thing, I got to ask a question, guys. So you know how Murdock had to kind of shift gears when his snitch wouldn't snitch, basically. And he basically exposes Hector as the White Tiger. He holds up his thing. So my question to you guys, in a way, inadvertently, did Matt get Hector Ayala killed because he actually was able to say, this is who you are, and now people can put a face underneath the mask?
I think he put him in peril. I don't know if he got him killed because he tells him at the end of the episode, you can't be White Tiger anymore. And what's he do? He immediately goes out as White Tiger and puts it when he has a huge target on him. I think if I'm Hector, I'm taking my wife and my family. I'm getting the heck out of New York. I'm setting up shop somewhere else. So I think Hector's pride also got him killed. But Matt didn't do
even if he wasn't dressed up as the White Tiger, he still had a larger target on him after he got exposed during the trial.
He did. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't think Daredevil thought that's what was going to be the outcome. That people would want to just kill him because he is a hero in a lot of people's eyes.
Yeah.
But I think mainly it was due to the fact that the snitch didn't snitch, so he had to rat out Hector. And then now the dirty cops knew who it was. And they're like, oh, okay, let's go kill him now. Or Kingpin. Hey, let's go kill him. He's a costumed vigilante.
I think it was a no-win situation for Matt because if he didn't it was his only play as far as getting Hector off. By saying, this guy is a hero. Listen to this. Otherwise, Hector's going to jail, and he ain't living that long in jail because they were going to take him out as soon as he went to prison. He might not even made it to the prison. So I think it was for Matt, it was a no-win situation. He probably gave Hector a little bit more of a chance to live by doing what he did compared to taking the risk of Hector being found guilty. Because if he's found guilty, he wouldn't have survived 48 hours. I mean, it turns out he didn't anyway, but it was a death sentence if he's found guilty. So that's I think next episode is going to be very interesting to see how Daredevil Matt reacts to this. I think that's going to be one of the key points of next episode, and I'm really curious to see it because I think Charlie Cox is going to put in an absolutely amazing performance.
Oh yeah.
But with that, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode of True Believers. I want to thank both Kevin and Kat for joining me and adding once again to the law firm of Wagner, Reitzel, and Kat. We'll be covering Daredevil one way or the other as the run continues. This has been the True Believers podcast on the Fandom Podcast Network. And of course, we've got all kinds of great things happening on the Fandom Podcast Network. And you can find us all over the place. We have some great Facebook pages out there, including the True Believers Facebook page. You can find us on most of the social medias out there as well. You can visit our homepage at fpnet.podbean.com, or if you've been watching us on YouTube, please give us a like and a subscribe. We appreciate your support with that. And of course, too, scan the QR code. It'll take you right to our website where you can find all the great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. And we are on Blue Sky too. Kevin, I always forget, what is our handle on Blue Sky?
It's the same as it is on X. It's Fan Pod Network.
There we go. We love it being on Blue Sky. It's been a fun experience since we've got there, and we thank you for all of your support on Blue Sky. And a reminder to TeePublic. We have all the gear from all of our shows, including our True Believers shirt here. It has some nice stuff. Kevin's sporting the gunmetal gray True Believers shirt.
That's right. Yeah,
that's a little bit fitting considering we've been talking the Punisher in this episode.
Yes.
But we appreciate all your guys' support there. You can find shirts, mugs, caps, pillows, tapestries, phone cases, laptop cases, so much more. Just visit tpublic.com, search for Fandom Podcast Network or the name of your favorite show here on the network, and you will find the gear. We do get a little kickback to help keep the Tesseract charged, and you can see it was looking a little dull. So, help us out here, guys. We don't want the Tesseract to run out of power. It could be devastating to the universe. But thanks again to everybody for joining us on the True Believers podcast. It has been an honor to talk Daredevil Born Again, and we can't wait to continue our coverage with the next episode. And until next time, guys, again, thank you to our amazing group of podcasters. I couldn't do it without you. We couldn't do it without you listeners. We love you guys for it. And we're glad we're able to let us share our thoughts about what's happening in the MCU with you. But as we like to close out around here, we like to say, as the great Stanley would say, Excelsior, and make ours marvel until we are born again. Because this was another great episode of Daredevil Born Again. Thank you so much, guys. We are out of here.